Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, it certainly looks like I got off really lucky. So as most of you know, I just got back from 2 different cruises to Japan and spending about 10 days in China. So I was gone for about 33 days and it was eventful. I had a great time. The people were great. Really enjoyed my experience. I haven't been to those areas in about 8 years or so. So it was really nice to get back, and you might have saw in one of the videos, either myself or Tony put out that we were being chased by a typhoon at one point, leaving Shanghai, China. We had to leave about 3.5 hours early than our cruise was expected to depart, and we outrun a typhoon as we headed to our first stop in Japan. We were fine. There were some rough seas, and but we were ahead of the typhoon, so we didn't have as real bad wind, the top decks were closed, things like that. But the ship was fine. It managed no problem. And we went to Japan. We spent 7 days. We had some nice weather. Everything was good. And then Tony and I flew back. And little did we realize that 2 days later, Japan would be hit with the worst storm in over 60 years as a typhoon hit landfall, right smack in the middle of Japan. And now Japan is about the size of California, and so it's a large state. It's not a large country, and it's an island. So there's not a lot of places to go. The land mass itself is about 80% mountainous region. So you can imagine that about 150 million people live in the remaining 20% of the land that's there. So their cities are large and their cities are populated. It's not unusual to have 6, 8, 9 million people clustered in an area in Japan. That's very normal. But over 1 million people were under evacuation ahead of this storm. So, that's the size of my city that I live in. So that's like them coming to us and saying, everybody in Ottawa, Canada has to leave. That's how big this storm was. And they got hit with everything. The sustained winds were about 180 miles an hour, with gusts over 250 miles an hour at some times. They got hit with a tornado. Some regions got hit with an earthquake as well. There's large, wide-scale flooding everywhere. At first it came in that there were 2 or 3 people missing or presumed, gone. And as reports are coming in, more and more are coming in. It's up to around 17 people now who have passed away, hundreds of people injured, even more homeless now, and a lot of people still missing out there. Some of the good news is that Japan is a good country for its government, its technology. It has money, the government, and it has an army and an air force and rescue workers. So there are a lot of people out looking for people. They're working on the infrastructure. They're getting the electricity working. It's not quite like some of the Caribbean islands that don't have that infrastructure to fall back on. So that's some good news there. Japan is, a little bit better that way. And it just comes to realization, because we're used to that, in the United States. Here comes United States in, if New Orleans gets hit, we're all there to support, and we're helping, and there's people flying in, and Canadian rescue workers are flying in, and firefighters are flying into California to help forest fires. So we all support each other, and there's donations if it's in the Caribbean, because we kind of feel like the Caribbean is kind of part of North America. You know what I mean? It's as far as like United States, Canada is concerned, it's part of us because we vacation there so often. Even though it's, a lot less money and a lot of poor people there, it's a vacation spot, and we kind of take it as our own, and we help look after people who are there as best we can as well with money and donations. And when things happen in China, Japan, Taiwan, we tend to think it's the other end of the world and it's not us. And just coming back from meeting people in Japan and traveling around with them and getting to know a lot of them, the tour guides, the people running the hotels, the people working on the ships, it just brings it back that these are people too. And, we think of it as a very industrialized nation and everything, but there's still a lot of poor people there. They may look like they're poor because they're in uniforms and they're, well presented and everything, but, most of their money goes just to support rent. It's incredible the prices that some people have to pay there just to have a place to roof, and I mean a small place, to put a roof over their heads. So it just brought back reality to me, and all my condolences go out to the people in Japan. And it's kind of struck home when I'm watching the videos of huge waves hitting the shore and coming in a big widespread flooding and the damage of the buildings gone. Places that I was at are now underwater. Buildings I drove by are now gone, and who knows? People I've met and seen may now not be around anymore. Just a few days later, it's kind of scary, and it's, I thank my lucky stars every day that this goes back to the cruise ships again, because cruise ships were affected as well. The Millennium, which I was on, the Celebrity Millennium, had to change her itinerary to avoid the hurricane and the typhoon. So she missed some ports in Japan. I guess, that Japanese cruise wasn't so Japanese if they couldn't go to Japan because of the typhoon. The Silver Seas ships had to avoid the area. I know Princess was watching it. I know Royal Caribbean was watching it. So everybody had to avoid the area. And I thank goodness that they will avoid these areas and not try and go into them if there's danger, if they're sure they can't get away. Because, we don't want us to be part of that missing persons report on the news. We should be very thankful that, yeah, it's disappointing I didn't get to go to Hidako, Japan, but you know what? I didn't get caught in a hurricane and maybe go down. So, I'm never one, if the cruise lines have to change my itinerary for safety, I have no problem with that. And it kind of harkens me back to the Norwegian Spirit. There are more things probably from the sounds of it that may have been going on that ship other than just weather. But no matter how disappointed you are, you have to think going into bad weather is worst case scenario possibility. So you should avoid that at all costs. And one of the reports I saw was a gentleman actually reported out saying, I've been on a large ship and we had waves hitting the windows on deck 7 of the cruise ship. And we were fine, and the cruise ship was able to dock when it got to port. And I'm going to myself, well, if you're on deck 7 and you're hitting the waves, you were not in the Norwegian Spirit, because Norwegian Spirit doesn't have 18 decks like an Oasis class ship does. So there's a big difference between a smaller ship and a larger ship. And you know what? I'd rather not be in those waves. I'd rather not be stuck in a hurricane. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions about it, just ask the people leaving on the spectrum of the seas when we had moderately rough seas. And I mean moderate. The waves were coming, but they weren't hitting deck 7 or anything like that. They were hitting deck 3, deck 4 maybe. And we were pretty smooth going through them. We were rocking like this, but that was about it. We had no real problems other than the wind. And people were sick all over the ship. All over the ship. So those same people who are complaining you're missing itineraries would be complaining that they got seasick because we went through rough seas. You see how it's a no-win situation for cruise lines? And just seeing the devastation in Japan and the devastation in China area and Taiwan when the other hurricane hit, it just, no thank you. I'd rather be safe on my ship And I'd rather the ships take the biggest precaution. Not, well, there's a 40% chance we won't make it through before the hurricane hits us on the way. No. I want there to be basically 0% chance. Then go. My life is more important than a port. So I'm always going to side on that. And I just have to say, after meeting everybody in Japan and realizing again, it's been so long, it just brings it back that the world is round and people are people everywhere you go. And they were so nice to me down there and so polite and so friendly. We ran into people in McDonald's who just started talking to us, young people who saw Tony and I filming and asked if we were on YouTube. And then they just started talking and looked at our channel, and we found out they went to university in Vancouver and studied for a couple years. And one of them was hoping to go in 2 years from now. So it was just such a pleasant place, and everyone was really, really friendly to me. And it hurts to know that maybe something happened to somebody that I met on this trip. Hopefully not, but my condolences go out to all the families and anybody who has anybody missing right now. And I hope Japan gets through this very, very quickly. At least I know they have a half-decent infrastructure in place, and they're working on it right now, and there is a huge search and rescue out there going. So next time we hear that there's a typhoon someplace way across the globe, it's nice to remember that they're people too, and it's easy to forget. It really is, because I would always pay attention to hurricanes in North America and hardly ever pay attention to typhoons or bad weather in other parts of the country, because it's just so far away. It's natural to do, but it just brought it all home, literally leaving 2 days before that typhoon struck and basically devastated the country I was just in. I hope you appreciate this update. If you did, please hit that like button. If you want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world, hit that subscribe button. Till next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.